Welcome to the Momentom Collective podcast. Momentom Collective provides training spaces and community around the world for unconventional minds and nomads to co-create the future. This podcast shares the stories on how we transcend and shift our passions into sustainable ventures. All right. Hi, everyone. John Early here with the Momentom Collective podcast, live from Sumbawa, our Indonesia artist residency, kicking things off for our second season here, and very honored to have our Tahir Qawwali here. He's been our guest teacher for the week. It's his last day with us, which has been an amazing week. And we're going to have a little drop-in to hear a bit about Tahir's story, music of the Sufis and his band Fannah Fi Allah, as well as some other projects coming up. Yeah. Thank you for joining us here today.
Glad to be here. What a week it's been.
What a week. What have been some highlights for you so far?
Oh my gosh, trying a lot of new things. I feel willing and able. And with that, a lot of these new challenging things in combination with the security and the closeness and container of the community here is just given such a fortification to grow in completely new ways in such a short amount of time. Whether it's like acro or aerials or dance or yoga or meditation or just speaking in front of people, new places. Wow.
Yeah. And being upside down many times a day.
Yeah, I like it.
Love it. So tell us a little bit about your band Fannah Fi Allah and your bit of your background leading into that, which I know is a big concept, and we've talked a bit about this week. But for those that don't know you, a little synapse on that.
Yeah, it's a long and tumultuous journey of mystical mishaps, but a lot of lessons in there. From a young age, I was really deeply yearning for a path in life, coming from Canada and the Western culture, wanting to find something more, something that had more depth and fulfillment and direction towards, I guess, more and more meaning. So as a young teenager, I found the path of yoga and Vedanta and different mystical paths, from Zen to Taoism to Sufism to Vedanta, and spent many years in the Himalayas as a full-time yogi, a hermit, a renunciate, practicing meditation and searching deep within. And in that whole experience of having years of time to kind of recreate myself or let it recreate on its own, to hear the music of the mystical masters, the wandering ascetics that sang devotional music, really captured my heart. And from there I was inspired to learn the music and began on a long journey of studying classical music from India, rag music, and learn all these different genres. You know, the history and the system of learning behind this music is full of depth, of spirituality, and many millennia of being passed down from master to student with such love and such integrity. So to be part of that stream was just fulfilled that yearning and that longing in many ways. And I found a guru, a master, a teacher, and in that search and in that learning I found Qawwali music, the mystical devotional music of the Sufis. It's very ecstatic, it's very intense, there's a lot of virtuosity, there's a lot of sophistication in the poetry itself and in the languages as well as the music, and it's just hella groovy. So I decided that's the music I wanted to do, and I began studying it seriously, very seriously, because I had nothing else really going on, and had good teachers and formed the Qawwali group Fannah Fi Allah in 2001 with my co-creator Amina, who's the first female to be in this genre of music. So we're like the first Westerners, and she's the first female. So in the 19 years we've been together, we've had to like confront and transcend a lot of trailblazing and a lot of like being something new. Like in India they always called us a USP, like a unique selling point for touring there. And so just coming to a culture where people don't often come to learn the music, like in Pakistan is really where the music is especially ripe for a long time and active to have foreigners come and really learn it with a lot of sincerity and being willing to drop everything and give their full hearts and lives to this music. We were very well received, and so I love Trailblazing, and for the last 19 years touring professionally throughout the world more and more, and it's a full-time job, full-time passion. And as well as that, I've been teaching on retreats, teaching in the 2 music schools that I run, doing a documentary film, being in workshops like this where we have like a focus setting of people, of community, to really delve deeper into the devotional music, as well as me being able to share some of the tradition through film and through interesting stories and theory of it, to be able to share this community devotion that I've picked up from the East to share in the West here.
You left home at 16 to go to India, correct?
Yeah.
Felt that calling.
Yeah.
So you've put your time in as a recluse, as you'd say, in solitude, long times in secluded places, deep in meditation. So you understand the value of going deep within. So how does that compare with once you tap into music of Qawwali, or this devotion music where you have people singing together? How can you reach different? How can you transcend space differently within yourself or within a group? How does that, from the individual to the collective? With song?
It's fascinating, because I guess living the life of a hermit and living in caves for years at a time, it was, you felt such solitude, and that solitude is great because you don't have all these, especially at that age, you don't have all these people telling you what's cool or what's great or what's not great, and all these judgments and opinions, or what's in style. It's kind of into a style from like 1,000 years ago or whatever. So not having that around me constantly at that formative age was important to like see what was within in sincerity. And it's being in such solitude, there's this yearning that grows of wanting to be able to share that, either like sit at the feet of a master and learn and have that connection. So that yearning there was growing through that experience. And the watching and feeling how the devotional music affected people and was a way of transferring that inner awareness in the poetry, in the passion, in the feeling. So it comes from such a depth. Devotional music has to come from a very profound meditative place where there's no doubt of like that strong like ambition to unite with the beloved, to praise the divine with all your heart and soul. That's when it's devotional, and that's when it's beautiful. When you lose yourself, you give up trying to be cool or trying to like have some kind of certain effect.
Drop the filters and the judgments.
Yeah, and just like let yourself be in complete honesty in the expression of devotion. Yeah, it comes from a lot of those years of spiritual practice. But when I joined the Sufi lineage, one of the things, like when we did it in our workshop the other day here, the zikr is when people are singing together in devotion, and that power of people's collective devotion is huge, and to feel it at such a scale again and again really affirmed the just the sheer power of it. What's possible when you have people all doing that together with that same intention. I was saying in the workshop how sometimes you approach meditation, you can do your pranayama and your mantras and your hatha, your mudras, whatever it is, but sometimes it can still be like half an hour in, you're just like, trying to get some space in my mind, and then do it again.
You have your own judgments coming through when you're alone with yourself, so maybe it's easier and more digestible for people to tap into that space when you're surrounded with that energy of collectively singing and devoting. Do you tap into the same place, you find, when you're deep in meditation or deep in song?
It's very energetic, the music. That's the difference. The meditation is you find like that more and more pinpointed presence of stillness where everything is just in harmony, but like, it's a slowing down. It's a slowing down of the mind, slowing down of the way that we associate to the mind. That's always, there's like a duality there where we're constantly engaged with our thoughts and judging our thoughts and directing our thoughts and trying to push thoughts out and call our thoughts in. Is pretty active in that respect. But then reaching a state of meditation, it's that still peaceful place of one pointed awareness, and that's from which that, like I said, the devotion emerges. Because if you're thinking of, one is thinking of all kinds of other things when they're practicing devotional music, it doesn't have that effect. It's got to come from that very clear, direct place for sure.
It seems like devotional music is making a bit of a comeback, especially in conscious communities, and with Kirtan is being repopularized in the West. What are the main differences between Qawwali, Sufi devotional music, and Kirtan?
Yeah, it depends which Kirtan, because you have like the Kirtan from India, which dates back to the great saint Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this whole bhakti movement, where breaking down the system of priesthood and castes and gender differences to where everybody just comes together and just sings and loses themselves in that devotional mood. So there's a lot of elements from that movement, from that time that was very rebellious in the history of the Indian subcontinent, that is part of what developed Qawwali. But the main difference is the poetry is very, very profound in Qawwali. It's very transcendental, and it's meant to like break us out of our concepts of like what we think is reality, what we've like defined in our mind as what we are, or what the world is around us, or what we should do, or how we're associated to it. So people that have read like Hafiz and Rumi and Jami and all these Sufis know that the poetry is very out there. It's like closer to like a Zen koan than like chant like Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, which is very simple, and there's a beauty in that. And there's that quality in Qawwali too, where there's like a really strong repetition, where you lose the concept of what the meaning is and just get carried by the feeling behind it. But it's like a jumping board having some theme to start from. And so it's different in that way, poetically, and musically it's much more sophisticated. It's in the classical system of rag. So the diversity of tonal frameworks and scales and ornamentations and embellishments and improvisations, both rhythmically and vocally, are very diverse, and the places people go in that creativity is really can be very out there, going to all kinds of psychedelic realms of exploration and daring. And I love that element of it because it keeps the music very present. I mean, in my experience, sometimes like singing a mantra is hard because you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this, and then your mind is just like, yeah. While Qawwali is so intense and so in the moment, and it's very animated, so it makes it easy to stay present in it, in the form.
Do you mind giving us a sample so we can be present with...
I can't really sing Qawwali as an individual because it's a group thing when we're learning it, but you can get a little bit of an idea.
Perfect.
Popular Qawwali song is Mast Mast. Eko vere de dam dam ali ali, ko vere de dam dam ali ali. Sakhilal kalandar mast mast, sakhilal kalandar mast mast, julelal kalandar mast mast, dam mast kalandar mast mast, dam mast kalandar mast. Vama gama bani badani da. Dani 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 bada ma ba ga ma de ga sa mast kalandar etc. It develops.
Beautiful. Nice little taste there. So, Sufism is a sect of branch off originally from Islam, correct?
In a sense,
In a sense.
Yeah.
If you can give a bit of a brief touch on that, because I know it's a big umbrella that it kind of branches off from, but Sufism, you were saying earlier, gets a bit more of that rebellious kind of branch off of still having questioning things and being a bit more cheeky about it, it seems.
It's extremely cheeky. But like any mystical tradition, you have the culture from which it emerges, the context. You have from Judaism, you have Kabbalah, and from Buddhism, you have Zen and this and that. And from Hinduism, you have Bhakti or Vedanta. Mm-hmm. And so you have the cultural context, and 1,000 years ago, the planet was a very religious place as far as humanity goes. Yeah? So that religious body is part of the culture. It's hard to separate it, especially like you have Christian cultures where it's like almost everybody's got to be Christian, in the history of many of these countries. And so in the Islamic world, that's from which the Sufi tradition came from. And like in any mystic tradition, you have that element of, okay, this is what we have of our ethical system that we've agreed upon so we can function as a community. Yeah. And then you have this element of, well, let's question some of this stuff. And beyond just the basics of religion, let's go deeper into spirituality, direct experience. What is God? Can we experience God? Where is God? Is it something that's accessible to the senses? Is it something that's accessible to the heart? So any mystic tradition, there's a lot of that questioning, and from which that rebellious kind of attitude is. And in Sufism, it's not all just like, screw the system, we're just a wild bunch of freaks kind of thing. There's a lot of years and generations of development of these systems. Like we have many systems of meditation, tasawwur, and we have many systems of breath exercises, habzidam, many
we were practicing that one.
Yeah, and in the workshop, and devotional practices, zikr, and dance. Like people know about the whirling dervishes, and there's many different things. It's very artistic. So Sufism accesses, for the most part, the divine experience and the divine connection through creativity and through love, through devotion, and through art. So these are the things that where creativity comes from, and in the same way that's our access point to the divine. So there's a very sentimental aspect to Sufism, as we see, as we read in the poetry, as we feel in the music. It's not a stoic kind of thing. And religion can be stoic, because it can be like, hey, you've got your system, you just follow this, and then you'll maybe get to heaven, inshallah, kind of thing. While the Sufis are like, okay, let's go deeper into this. Let's really question. Let's feel a little more. Let's be daring a little bit more. And in the history of all the great saints of Sufism, there was so much crazy controversies and things, which is very interesting. And I'd say, not to go into every saint's story, because they're all very unique and very diverse personalities, but the ones that really develop Sufism, tasawwuf we call it, all have these diverse and unique stories of breaking through the system to find a new path to forge for humanity. And say a typical one, like Al-Halaj, one of the Sufi masters, he said that I am God, an al-Haq, and that was a big issue, so he was murdered by the clergy, because it's this whole thing of this humility of there's God, and then there's the seeker or the worshipper that in humility and humble prayer asks God or reveres God, right? But the Sufis have this experience, like the name of my group, Fannah Fi Allah, is that losing oneself in God. The concept of your individual personality is dissolved in that greater mystery. And that's the destination. It's like moksha or nirvana. So what the typical Muslims didn't understand at that time is they saw it from that you and me perspective. While when someone's in that state of union, it's not like I am God, it's like I am God, and there's not this individual thing approaching God, relating to God. And that's that experience. And the same with Rumi and all these masters. And so they were persecuted for it. Many of them were persecuted for it, depending on which culture for which they were part of But so yeah, that's the connection to Islam. It's much greater, and then also the diversity or the antagonism of it even.
Just a few thousand years of history in a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's interesting stuff.
Well, you had shared in your workshop with us here at Momentum one of your big takeaways from one of your masters regarding just, believe what you want to believe, but practice with utter sincerity.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I feel that alone is such a powerful lesson of how, no matter what you do, approach it, whether you're singing, whether you're moving, of just being present with that and do so with complete sincerity.
Yeah, it was a big gift, actually, my early years with my Sufi master, and he implanted some of these very important lessons, you could say, or perspectives that help not to get stuck in certain kinds of ruts, because in so many ways we want to be something more than we are. We want to like optimize ourselves and become a better person and grow, It's like the self-help thing is just nonstop. These days. It's not like, okay, we practice our art, we practice our religion, or we practice our family life, and this is just what we have, and we accept it and give thanks for it. Like in Bali, you feel that a lot. People go through their
morning offerings. And
they go through it, and there's a contentment in that that's so palatable. Same in here in Sumbawa. While we're just like off in this corner, like wanting to optimize ourselves, to like be stronger and like know more and be more directed and have all these skills. And so it's important to know that about the sincerity thing, because a lot of it's like fake it till you make it. Okay, I want to be like a more compassionate individual. I'm gonna try to be more compassionate in this situation. This person is really annoying, and I'm gonna try to just like be more loving. I'm always thinking of myself. I just want to like give more, these kind of thought processes that are really common. Well, my master was like, this is the practices of Sufism here and Islam here, and I want you can do whatever you want. I want you to follow your heart, and this is the essence of what's behind growth, right? If you're always trying to do something or be something that you're not, it'll always impede that kind of growth and that expansion. So he said, practice whatever aspects of this path feel like they resonate with you. And sometimes it'll be hard. Sometimes you have to push through. Sometimes you have to challenge yourself or confront challenges. But you can confront challenges with a sincere heart. Something you really want. If you really want to get up in an aerial move, like, it's hard, but you feel ambitious. You feel enthusiasm for it, and that's still sincere. And that works in the spiritual practice too. You can be like, I'm supposed to meditate, and I should meditate, and it's like that's different than like, okay, this is important that I meditate. I feel like it's gonna benefit me and all sentient beings, and I know that it feels really good once I get into it. So there's still that enthusiasm to approach it.
Right.
It's a subtle difference, but I think it's important, and it helps direct us to the lessons that we need, experiences that we need.
So you've lived on your own a lot. You've lived in a lot of different communities around the world, and obviously here with the Momentum community. I'm curious, how do you personally define community?
Yeah, that was a good talk we did the other day.
We had a great community talk.
Oh my gosh, that felt like just barely scratching the surface. Yeah, I'm really fascinated by community, because I have my community as far as like my 7 musicians I've been touring with for 19 years, and we're often squeezed into small and things, whether it's a tour van or a room or a stage, and so we have to develop those social skills. And then the greater Sufi community of people that have like similar inspirations that they play off each other with. And what was your question again?
How you define community?
Yeah, I think it goes to what we were talking about, where there's 2 elements to it. There's one where people have a common belief system, or even to have it more eclectic, they have a common inspiration, whether it's a particular art or a fascination with any kind of information or fetish or whatever it is that brings people together. So that's, the catalyst. And in my experience, like I was saying the other day, that most important quality that makes community possible for more than a week or more than a month is when all those unique subconscious often subconscious qualities of each of the individuals harmonize. Yeah. And it's interesting here in Momentum because it's like you have people that have similar interests, right? And you also have like a real appreciation for diversity. Like I'm here with this whole like cultural, like mystical, religious, musical side that stands out as something very unique here, and people really are dropping into it in a really passionate way. And it's like you don't have like 3 women that are all like masters at the silks, that are all vegan, that worship cats. Like maybe there's people that have a lot of similar interests, but I like that diversity, and I think that's essential in community because like the puzzle pieces fit if you're all like the same, if you're all like super strong alpha dudes that are into acro or whatever. It would be difficult. And having people like me that are like learning it for the first time and really keen, and yeah, it's different things. So all these aspects, and so often we think of like, oh, what things harmonize. Like I'm really into veganism. Oh, and this person's like knows how to like make vegan food.
Yeah.
And you think that fits, and yeah, that's important. But there's also, like I said before, like all the negative qualities that have to be able to harmonize as well, and everything in between. And so much of this is subconscious, and here in the community experience, we do uncover it, and especially from all this yoga and meditation and exercise, it brings up a lot of things, like hidden things. It's expansive. So we see some of these, but ultimately, what's behind community, I think, it's very subconscious. The things that give us the inspiration and opportunity to be together and feel really happy to be together and progress together, and like trust each other, feel like we can rest on each other when things are hard, that we can be daring and sincere, and all these things are essential for growth. So I think that's what's behind community, and that's really the ultimate meaning of it, is that harmony of the different personalities and characters and systems and thoughts and feelings that are behind like who we are as a persona.
Yeah, the individual and the collective.
Yeah.
And I know something that really came out that stuck out for me from my workshop on community and some of your input. We were discussing some of those moral ethics, those kind of guidelines for a community to come together under, especially in a place, like a Muslim island here, like in Sumbawa, and having pretty strict external limitations.
Yeah.
But then they have the same internal goals of focusing through prayer and daily chant and all that. In contrast to, a music festival where people are so free, and because they're so free, maybe they have less internal freedom through that, that specific kind of intention. So, I know you've shared as well some of that same ideas of playing in front of crowds where everyone is there intent and worshiping versus these kind of like psychedelic
noodle
festivals. You want to talk about that experience between those two things?
Yeah, well, you said it the other day where it was, decision fatigue. When we don't have like a specific set of guidelines in life or a framework of, whether it's a belief system or just like an ethical code that we go by, then there's just so many ways we can go in almost any moment. So like you were saying, you could believe that, or you'd be vegetarian, or you could be involved in yoga, or you could take a religion, or you could do kundalini, and then you're just like, I'm just gonna eat ice cream and chill out.
Just play video games. Yeah, there's too many options. Yeah. So do you believe that external limitation creates more freedom and points more towards internal freedom?
There's no like cold hard answer for that, but I think it's part of the unique experience we're on, where for each of us we confront that, and no matter whether we like it or not, there's always going to be limitations. You can call them limitations, or you could call them boundaries, opportunities, right? There's always going to be those. You could just keep being free and free, and it just doesn't like go. We're people. We're inside skin. We have to breathe. We have to eat. There's a lot of things there. So, I think these limitations are natural for one, and they're there whether we like it or not. So we have to embrace them. And I think like in the system here with Momentum, there's the whole system of yamas, the Ashtanga, the Eightfold Path, which is a really nice guideline for people to at least consider and have available. Gabby was saying it was like a rare opportunity that we're in a container where that is even possible, to have a collective set of guidelines like that. So I think for each person it's necessary to really consider what is important to them. And in the whole experience of being like a free-range freak, like most of us are, we've had to go through those phases where we're just like, whatever on all these rules, I'm just gonna like fly the coop. And we've all gone through really stages of freedom, I'm sure, a lot of us, and we're in different points of us. Like some of the people that are in their 30s here feel like they're a little bit more crystallized in the path. It's like I wake up and I do this and I have to eat like this and I really want to like give in this way and have this kind of like set of gifts that I give, while the younger people could be more of like, I'm just like ready to receive and open to receive. So it's also, you know, if you think of the timeline of life, there's going to be phases for both, and I think it's really important in both ways. And I like how at Momentum we question it and we talk about it and we have some potential guidelines. And if you really look at it, I think in a bigger picture, we do have a lot of, you all do hold down quite a system for which people can grow from, like a framework and a container. And what creates that container is not necessarily just we believe this here. It's like an overall a vibe of focus and containment, and just like
and questioning that.
Yeah, and just a general kind of kindness, which gives people a sense of being held within something that's a community.
We were talking about the ego the other day and dissolving the ego, and how that can be. People get so fixed on dissolving the ego. It can, and you were talking about your own battle with that, and you kind of just said.
It was a quick moment, yeah.
But if you can explain a little bit further on, you know, how much we should be, in your opinion, focusing on this dissolving the ego, and if it's worth that daily battle, that grind against it, or if it's better to just kind of recognize what it is and try and be a bit more lenient around it.
Yeah, it's a slippery kind of concept, this whole ego thing.
Yeah.
I don't think about it much anymore. But there was, like I said, like we said in the class, that whole thing of like, in spiritual communities, people often go so far as to say like we're battling against the ego, and the ego is this enemy. And you get kind of tired of that, especially when there's a lot of, you can sense the insincerity in it. Like when someone acts humble, and it just seems like such an act.
Right.
And they're like, oh yes, please, we have all these cookies for everyone. No, I don't need a cookie. I can just be okay. I'm frustrated. I didn't get a cookie because those guys got a cookie. You see that a lot in the spiritual community, like a false humility.
Right.
And that really irked me over the years, especially in the Sufi community. You get that a lot because it's so important. So in the Sufism, there's like a specific system where like ego is the nafs, and there's this whole way of approaching it and unveiling the greater self. Just like in yoga, there's like the self, and then there's the self, and there's those levels of it. And that concept of Fannah, which is losing oneself, Fannah Fi Allah being the ultimate annihilation in God. There's like many stages of Fannah that they label, like when you lose yourself in love or in devotion, or Fannah Fi Allah is like losing yourself in love for your master, and love being that vehicle to to come out of yourself as like a self, like with your some scars of like, I don't like this, I do like this, I need that, like very self-absorbed. And in the West, where we're such individuals these days, self-obsession is just like the common. Everybody's looking after number one, and it feels like that. Well, when you're in community,
or being super spiritual, to have an Instagram post to talk about how spiritual you are.
Yeah,
these kinds of things.
Yeah, and like, give me some space. I'm trying to meditate and become one with everything. Oh, shut up! I'm trying to become one with everything. Like it's
Yeah,
such a contrast.
Yeah.
But the concept of self, and there's that whole thing of like, can you as an ego like take yourself out of being an ego? It doesn't really work like that. You can't like
Right.
intentionally like, okay, now I'm like, "Arr," like battling the ego, and like, because what is that?
Even the
That's like-
statement I have no ego is kind of implying that there's
It's a paradox.
something.
Yes, but in these experiences of community, of sharing, of music, of prayer, of yoga, we all experience it where we expand, and there's always going to be contraction, always going to be expansion, but we get to taste, at least we get to taste that feeling of being out of that antagonism and that struggle of being an individual island complaining about the world around us, at least.
Well, I always do appreciate your cheekiness and the playfulness that you do approach this with, because I do feel religion, spirituality, any of these things, it's healthy to kind of question things, make fun of it, and never take anything too seriously. So
Yeah.
thank you for embodying that
Oh, it's
part.
been fun.
Most humble.
Oh yes, Sufis are the best because they're so humble.
Before we wrap up, if we can go into a few of the we had a workshop on some of the little cues for singing, the meandal and these different kind of techniques. If you can run through 2 or 3 of them, just so people can get a sense of how it's broken down a little bit more, because it is such a different sound to what we have in Western music.
Yeah,
the slides and the vibrato and
yeah. There's so much there, and it's very organic. Just like I'd say the spiritual path behind it is very organic. It's not like compartmentalized, and it's not like a set system of like right and wrong. There's quite an openness, which I love, and so the music covers that. So we cover a lot of things that cross over in Western music. There's not like a divide of like, this is Eastern music, they use a different note, it's not like that. So like in the class we were just doing our natural scale, like sa re ga ma pa da ni sa da ni da ma ga re da, ah, and warming up the voice and the transition between notes, and then different intervals like sa ga re ma ga pa ma da, like this, just like in Western music. And talking about timbre, instead of being like oh, we're like ah, where we open up both the facial and the guttural sound to have like a really broad tone, so you get the crispy highs and the bassy warm lows in a note. Ah, and then once we got through that part, we went to, like you said, the microtonal ornamentations, the embellishments. So instead of just being like ba ma da, we could do it like ba ma da ma ga. How to organically move through the notes. And this is practical for everything, but for one, it's like it feels like in the body like a beautiful way of expressing. We can bring a lot of we can squeeze a lot of emotive juice using these things when we add some of these bendies and play with the dissonance between notes and resolving that by bending and stretching and doing quick little run. There's so many different texturing things.
And it seems like it comes from the soul a little bit more. You can't, those little techniques, it's harder to fake, I guess, so to say, because it's not just like this note and that next note. There's so much more of the that juiciness in between, all the magic in between notes, like jazz or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's heaps of fun. And I've been doing this for a long time and teaching it in festivals and retreats and things. And everybody just loves it. That's why I do it, because it's something different. But then people are like, wow, I think of music differently now. And I like the idea of exploring in different directions instead of just doing major and minor 2-3 chord things. I want to try some of this stuff and use some of these vocal exercises to open my throat so I can sing higher and louder without feeling like I'm straining, all these kind of things.
Yeah. Do you see Sufi music getting to be a bit more mainstream anytime? Like almost like yoga's made this big revival, and then you've got your stripper yoga, you've got your twerking yoga, and these kind of things that are its own discussion. But do you see any type of hybridized devotion music in a bit more of a popular sense?
Yeah, it's happening, and it's early for this. That's why I've been screening these short films to show some of the beautiful culture behind it, and it's really inspiring. It makes people feel attracted to wanting to like bring in and create more culture and learn about more culture to be inspired from in our little like alternative bubbles. I mean, we've been doing this music for almost 20 years, so there's definitely a popularity there, playing a lot of major events in the transformative festival scene, as well as the world music festival scene, as well as in Pakistani Indian community, all this stuff. So it is growing, and it's still something that's kind of niche in a way, but a lot of people are being tuned into it to a certain extent. Like in a few weeks we're playing at Bhakti Festival, and there's a lot of that new age kirtan kind of thing. But then the fact that we've played there for almost 10 years now, all these thousands of people are getting a taste of something a little bit more advanced, that has a little more cultured, a little more diverse, with a little bit more, you could say, intensity.
Depth, for sure.
Yeah, so it's coming in there on this level, and it gives people a yearning for it, and whether it makes people want to buy a Rumi book and read it, or whether it makes them want to like try some of these other ways of expressing through their voice, I think it's happening. And it's not like I'm expecting this to be like the new wave like Hare Krishna was or something like that, but I'm really glad that there's a lot of enthusiasm around it, and people are really excited to, from like, especially from like a Western point of view of like seeing the Western side of yoga, to be able to see like as a bridge, us white people that have spent so much time in India and Pakistan with all these great masters, to be able to bring it back. Like the bridge just feels really open, and people are like, wow, there's yoga and spirituality is like, there's more to it, and there's all this culture, and it's not just like an exercise, or kirtan's not just like call and response and these very simple, there's ways of like, there's much more to it, and so people have that attraction and yearning, and that's there.
Well, thank you so much for bringing the bridge for this beautiful music. And where can people find out more about the band Fannah Fi Allah?
Oh, fannahfiallah.com. I mean, if you search Qawwali, that's Qawwali is the name of the genre, and I hope everybody has a chance to look that up, and we're on there, but it's a big genre of music, and you'll find our website through there, and then of course when you want to study more, we'll see you in Guatemala, of course.
He's coming back. We got you roped into the Momentom vibe. So what a magical week. Thank you so much for all your time.
Honored.
Sharing with us here in our artist residency in Indonesia, and we'll be in touch. We'll drop in again in Guatemala soon.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, pleasure. It was fun rapping.
Yeah.